Welcome back to Understanding VC. I am your host Rahul. Understanding VC is a perpetual MBA on a single subject, venture capital. And today I'll be having an in depth conversation on why it's important for startups to manage their finances with Manoj Agarwal. Manoj is a co founder and managing partner at Seed Fund, an early stage VC fund based in India. And he has more than 25 years of experience in setting up and managing businesses, projects, M&A, fundraising, and business strategy. Now let's talk to him. Hey Manoj, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure, Rahul. Looking forward to this. We've been working on this for some time and good to be here with you.
Yeah. So as a founder, I hated looking at finances, but one of our earliest angel investors, he forced us to make a budget and forced us to look into finances more closely. And then once you do that, you quickly realize how important is to for startups to manage their finances and look into it more deeply. How important do you think is it for startups to look into and manage their finances?
I think finance as a subject, is very critical and important for any startup at any stage of their journey, other than their core product or technology which they are developing. Because ultimately, if you don't manage your finances well, at every stage, you can go wrong and whatever good work you have done can fail. So managing finances should not become a reason for your failure. So making a budget, following the budget, tweaking it if required, you cannot always go right, initially when you make your budget, but understanding it, step by step process, and then probably looking at it at every stage, say every 3 months, and see if you need to tweak it. Following it to a large extent is very critical in that journey, irrespective of the stage. Though the way you do it might change, right, in every stage of your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does it change? So when you're an early stage startup to like at the different stages of fundraising, right? Like at seed or Series A or beyond, how does the managing of finances evolve?
So while managing finance by itself as an overall component remains the same, but the specifics keeps evolving. At an early stage, you have limited money available, say pre-seed to seed stage. In many cases, you are pre-revenue. You are largely building a product. So you have clarity to some extent on the money available with you, what you have raised, the timeline, the window, the runway available with you, say 18 months. You expect your product to be ready in, say, 9 months or whatever, 12 months. And you want to get into early revenue stage where you have early customers. So in this journey, you are largely building a product. So you know the team required, the cost is largely manpower, or in some cases, like if these are deep tech startups, they need equipment, material, they probably have access to some of the labs where they work with. So they have to get down to the specifics, understand what they will need in this journey over this period, and probably keep relooking at it every few months, say 3 months, and see if they've gone overboard, or they need to reduce somewhere, or they need to raise capital at certain point. So if your runway is for 18 months, and if your product journey has evolved, or if you have not been able to build what you were supposed to build, you have to relook at it, or you have done it early. You can get early customers. So you have to look at the situation then, and then plan your next fundraise well in time. And sometimes, if that is becoming a challenge, if you're taking time, depending on the scenarios, the funding scenarios, you may be doing everything right, but the market is looking at things differently. Then you probably have to work on extending your runway, right? Reducing costs wherever you could, working with the teams. So you have to keep your teams engaged, and though you can't share everything, but they should understand where are you in your journey.
Yeah. So for an early stage startup, this is very important, right? Looking at finances, because it helps you operate very efficiently and with high productivity, and you don't have like a lot of room to be inefficient or taking unnecessary sort of risk. Otherwise, you go bust,
Right.
right? So, what do you think are some of the other reasons why managing finance is important? So, I can think of couple. One is like, yeah, like I said, improving the productivity and efficiency. The other thing that I thought was like, if you really know what your unit costs, unit economics and things like that are, it helps you grow sustainably.
Yes. So, the whole managing finances within that efficient financial management,
Yeah.
where you have you have the money you need in your journey. So if that is out of your way, that tension. So, many times founders are always, planning on raising capital. While that is an important function, but there should be a gap between two fundraisers, and founders should have enough time to build their products, companies, and all. So if that planning is in place and you are following it to the T, and you are able to execute the plan along with the financial stability, it helps you manage efficiently. Your productivity certainly improves, because otherwise it takes away your time, it takes away your energy.
Yeah.
You're sometimes running, meeting investors, you're talking to people to raise capital. So I think that becomes a very critical function. And also, if you're able to do things efficiently, like, you raise capital, you can go and hire a fancy office, which you may not need. Like, I was with a startup a couple of days back, and they were in a very expensive office, and I thought that probably is not required by them, because they're not really so much outside world facing. And we said, you can be in a more decent office, will probably cost you half. And comfortable office, you don't have to compromise on the comfort of people, but sometimes locations and things like that can change the cost and all. So I think things like that, where you spend money, is also very critical.
Yeah.
Budgeting it right is very critical, which can take away that extra pressure on.
So if you know all this, it also helps you sort of raise the right sort of funding, right? Whether it's equity or debt or whatever, if you are like on top of your finances.
Yeah, 100%. I think people, investors, I mean, we don't expect founders to be finance experts, but a good understanding of finance, how they have been managing their investments, their expenses during their growth journey, product building journey. Sometimes simple things like, you need, as part of your product development, you need a certain set of equipments, which you can go and buy expensive equipments, or you can go and access labs, right?
Yeah.
There are enough facilities available. Or sometimes when you are building your prototypes, in case of hardware, how efficiently you can do that matters, right? Because if you just go and buy things, they can be expensive, but efficient planning is very important there. So it is, not just finance management, then it comes into like procuring it right, which again is an extension of same
Yeah. Yeah.
function.
Yeah. And what do you think about the compliance side of things? If you're on top of finances, you sort of reduce all the compliance risk.
So compliance is a separate function
Okay.
in a way.
Yeah.
While it probably comes under the same umbrella, even if you manage your finance well, but compliances require you to follow the rules properly, like in the Indian context, we have secretarial requirements, we have income tax requirements, we have various labor laws requirements. Sometimes it also depends on the sector you are. Say, if you're a fintech startup, there are RBI regulations which you have to follow.
Yeah.
So, good understanding of the compliances your business needs to follow. So, there are a set of standard compliances which every business has to follow, and there are a set of specific compliances which a particular nature of business has to follow, depending on what you are doing. So a good understanding of that, a fair understanding of that, you may not know the specific details, and having the right people around you to help you do that, and doing that on time is very important. And it is also important in your fundraising journey. See, when you go and raise capital, VCs or whoever it is, they do diligence. And if things are not managed well, if your finance, your reporting, your compliances, you know, is not managed well, if you've not done it right, you might lose that opportunity. And sometimes that delays the whole process. So according to me, a lot of times I see founders completely neglect that when they set up. Well, I understand that the focus is on building the product, but there are basic compliances which is very important. And what I also see, sometimes they have gone to professionals who probably have also not helped them right. So getting the right professional, probably talking to your advisors, your other founders who have worked with such people, getting the right professional to assist you also is very critical in this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a founder, I neglected it. So from your experience, like what percentage of founders take this seriously?
I think it's improving, but probably a very low percent, 25, 30% in the early stage, when they start. But I guess, as they go into the journey, it does become important. I've seen some of our startups, some of our founders are very particular. They do regular compliances, they have the right company secretary, and, CAs on board. They do regular board meetings, which again is, very critical that you know, though as investors we keep talking to founders, but a formal regular board meeting also becomes very important, both as a compliance process and also from recording developments and taking the right approvals as required by the law.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the the startup that's in a fancy office, right? I kind of feel that if you operate under constraint in a frugal way, you build up some sort of competitiveness, because then you'll strategize better, you'll allocate resources better, and then you'll be also, and if you're really looking at your finances closely, you'll be more guarded on all the external risks that you might have. So I kind of feel that if you operate like that, then that becomes like a really great competitive sort of advantage that a startup.
So yeah, in a way, yes. If you have, so it's not just about a fancy office. It's about so many things,
Yeah.
right?
Throughout, right?
The culture of, yeah, always see, you if you have raised capital, you're not a profitable company, then you are building something using somebody else's capital, which is fine because that is how businesses in this world has been built, especially in the startup ecosystem. But then using it right becomes very critical. So it is not that you have received, sometimes tens of millions of dollars in funding, so it can be just splash. We have seen that startups also go on a hiring spree. So you should also have people as required. Sometimes just having too many people may not help you. You should understand what are your people requirements. People are important. They are the most important, component or the, element of this journey, right? You need good people, but you need right people. And you should have the right number of people whom you need in this journey, and you should hire as and when required. Yeah, you should do planning in place when it comes to using resources like office equipment and things like that. While you should not compromise on comfort level, but should not go overboard there. You need to give enough good working environment to your employees, which is fine, but they also understand that they're working in a startup which has a long way to go. So people understand that. So you have to find the right balance there. And today, with what has happened post pandemic, flexi working, people working from home, a lot of our startups are now, working, their full teams are working from home. They meet once a quarter to get to know each other, to share experiences. those things are also helping in reducing those costs, though some costs do get added there also. The security, the compliance, that has added another element of technology layer, which you have to ensure that you know you are in a secure environment, your product is being developed in a secure environment. So while that complexity has got added, but then it gives you flexibility to some extent. Productivity tools have become important. So that again becomes part of your compliance, regulations, and all that journey. People also have issues there in terms of work hours and all. So yeah, overall, I think comfortable environment is important, but luxury is not important.
Yeah. I think after 2021, with the whole, there were startups in India that was offering like BMW bikes and things like that as a signing bonus, and there was a lot of people getting very inflated sort of salaries. What do you think of such approaches, especially from, like you said, startups who are not like profitable?
Yeah, so unfortunately, yeah, while I'm not aware of BMW bikes, I would like to probably I would have joined one of them. But coming to inflated salaries, yes, while you need to pay people as per their capabilities, but then in the startup ecosystem, when people come and join, they are aware. They are taking a journey which has a different path where success will mean much more. So that is where ESOPs come into play. So especially at the early stage and early growth stage, it is very important for startups till they have achieved sufficient revenue to hire people efficiently, right? Where they should offer them an upside so that if things go right, and we have seen that people do, work in that situation. We have seen some very good people working with, as part of the early founding teams and joining them early, who could have earned like 4 times, 5 times, or much more, but they enjoy doing it. So those are not easy to find people, but I think founders who are able to find such committed people end up building good products and good businesses. That becomes very critical at the early stage. Similarly, the tech salaries had gone over the roof, which put a pressure on a lot of startups. See, the growth stage startups which had raised a lot of capital were like hiring people and putting them on the bench. They were afraid that they'll not get people, which was in turn putting pressure on the early stage startups because they were not able to pay those kind of salaries. So they found it difficult to hire people. In a way, that situation seems to have corrected a little bit now, which is good thing. I think that kind of a situation where people go overboard on hiring just because you have raised a lot of capital does not mean. So that is where again managing financials efficiently. So you end up burning your capital till you have reached, even if you have raised $100 million, you will burn it very fast till you have reached your profitability or path to profitability, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like for startups, it's not enough to do just product innovation. There's also need to be distribution innovation and also team innovation, right? Like how do I find clever ways to find people at reasonable cost so that they can grow sustainably. And the point that you mentioned about managing your finances, even for managing the team, what do you think, like what is the role of managing finances when it comes to the team, improving the team morale and also retaining the team?
So yeah, I mean, see, to retain people, to have people working for you without any worries, it is important that they know that,
The best.
month on month they're going to get their salaries because, whether they are youngsters or whether they are people, young families, they need that safety. They may be okay with being paid a little less, but they need that certainty and safety. So founder's role is very important in communicating that, that we have this available for the next whatever 18 months, and as they go into the journey, maybe a communication in that regard. How is the company doing? How are the numbers working out? And also working with them if they need to tweak it. Like, say, if you, for example, you realize that you need to manage your, expenses better, and your fundraising is getting delayed, say at the next stage, then it is better to go and talk to the teams in advance and see if you can take their help in increasing your runway. Sometimes probably I while you can call it salary cut, but some salary adjustments can be done, which can be paid later. Maybe some ESOPs can be brought in, but teams are happier knowing this well in advance than being told suddenly that they're in trouble. So then, if they sense trouble, they may look at opportunities, they may move out. So we have seen this happening with a couple of our startups where, we told them that, talk to your team, since you have this runway, you're raising capital, may get delayed a little bit because of the environment. So please do some salary adjustment, cost adjustment, and sometimes you may have to let go people who probably are not, at that time critical in a good way, which again, rationalizing the teams becomes very important. So ultimately, you have to ensure that the company survives, right? Company is above everybody else.
Yeah.
If the company survives, everybody benefits, right? The founder, the teams, and everybody else. So I believe in that company first approach, which is beneficial to all the stakeholders.
I think that's the only approach that matters.
Right.
Yeah. So see, but the problem is like most of the founding teams does not have a finance background, right? So like
Except for some CAs who have become founders.
founders, yeah. Yeah. So how do you think founders can get started, and what are the basic things that founders should pick up as soon as you start building a business?
So yeah, so especially when we as investors invest in a company, we try to bring that learning, that value to the founders. So I think having the right advisors can help you. Taking help from investors can help you if you are not strong in that. And sometimes you may feel but you may not know everything, right? So even while you have the professionals guiding you, say the company secretaries and the chartered accountant and all of that, but it is good to, work with your advisors, your investors, to understand that, to go to them when you have a problem, or rather not wait for a problem, to probably sit with them. And we do that, we try to do with specific set of our founders. Some of them probably have been have done that already, or some of them understand because they come from corporate backgrounds, they're experienced enough, so they would have done that. But still, sometimes the corporate backgrounds, the corporate finances are managed very differently. So I think this learning is important. These things cannot be learned in books, right? They have to be understood from experiences of people. So I think working with your investors, working with your advisors becomes very critical to understand that.
And for any business, what are the sort of basic metrics, financial metrics that they should be looking at?
So there are a number of things which one should have an annual budget in place, which is probably the most important document every year. Probably have a broad, 2 year, 18 months, 24 months plan. While you can have 5 year, 10 year, but that doesn't work in the startup ecosystem. But at least for the next, till you go to your next round, at least a broad plan for that, and a detailed plan for, say, next 12 months. And then you kind of monitor it on a month-on-month basis. Where are you, depending on whatever stage you are. I think this becomes important. Your revenue earning also, are you meeting your revenue targets? Then things like cost of goods sold or cost of services sold, whether if you are a consumer a product company and you have, non-software product, you have cost of, making or buying or whatever. So understanding that. So is that as per the plan? So where is it gone wrong to get it right, or change the budget accordingly? Similarly, overall, I would say in a SaaS kind of a company, people cost is under
Yeah.
your main cost. So where are you on that? And then demarketing different set of people, like the R&D kind of people. What are you spending on product development? What are you spending on support and services? What are you spending on your ancillary services? In terms of people, also becomes very important. Today, cloud costs have become very important, especially in technology companies. So managing your cloud costs is very critical. I have seen situations where, even a pre-revenue company started spending a lot of money on cloud, where there were ways to manage that better. So sometimes they have money in the bank, they lose focus on that. They feel it's part of their necessary cost. It is, but there are today plans available, to reduce that for a certain, extent of time. So I think costs management of costs is very important. Then, where are you in this journey when it comes to, revenue? So understanding your revenue growth is also very important. And are you one challenge which people face in new products is how much to charge.
Exactly.
That is, sometimes you either undervalue your product and you charge very less. Sometimes you're asking for too much, which people are not willing to pay. So that I would not say that investors are the right people, but there will be, that you will have to probably do some research, work with people who understand that, work with initial set of customers to get that right. So, and monitoring these metric on a regular basis, your cash flow, cash in the bank, receivable management becomes very important. You can't, especially in enterprise sales kind of a situation, you sometimes don't get money for 90 days. So you have to manage that well. There, in an Indian context, there are today, regulations in place to help you that, right? The MSME regulations, which government has put in place, which says that they should be paid within 45 days. If enterprises don't pay, then they're penalized, right? So that way, those things are in place, but you should also monitor that. So the whole thing, your cash flow management, your P&L becomes also very important. Okay, if you're burning also, how much are you burning? How is the movement in that burn? Your revenue, difference of your revenue and expenditure, whether it's positive, negative, and what kind of revenues you are earning. Sometimes you get this one-time revenue which is not recurring, so probably not really part of your MRR, ARR in the right way. Because typically startups are, in the technology space, either a product company, whether it's SaaS, whether it's a hardware. So they're not project companies, right? So they don't have these one-time revenues mostly. Once in a while they may have. So that regular run rate becomes very important, monitoring that.
Yeah. What you mentioned about cloud cost and also the R&D cost and the pricing, when you these are all very difficult, especially for software companies. And I have seen where software companies have startups that I've worked for have like very low margins because of the cloud and the R&D cost, and they're charging not enough. And this I think this can only be fixed through experimentation and really testing like
Yeah,
in the market, right?
especially with the AI companies now, the kind of data they need to have, that probably the major cost will probably be cloud costs, right?
Yeah.
So which will become, while you may on paper have those huge margins, but understanding that, so you have to probably reach a certain revenue scale to
For the
utilize
margins.
that data.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier also that, it's important for startups to report these metrics to their VCs so that they can also help. So from a VC perspective, so by one first question is like, how important is like reporting your finances to VCs on a consistent basis? And then what are some of the mistakes that you've seen personally that startups make in terms of what they report or frequency?
So yes, we have had different situations in different startups, but typically what we look at and what we prefer is that certainly quarterly financial data should come in, but what we also look at is some kind of a regular monitoring of the sales, what is happening with the revenue numbers, cash flow. So we look at startups putting this data on the cloud, and which we can have access to. So where on a regular basis it gets updated. Certain businesses allow you to do that. So where we are aware of exactly, what is happening at any point of time, you know, how many customers are there, what is the run rate, what are the expenses incurred. Expenses were probably it's more many times routine nature, which are updated, and probably some tweaking can be done month on month. So that kind of regular cash flow monitoring, which includes revenue expenses, becomes very important. And then some kind of monthly MIS, which we designed for each startup, because each has its own requirement, is important for investors to understand. And then tracking the performance vis-a-vis the budget, the numbers projected, and then doing this quarterly reviews, also detailed reviews on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So cash flow, monthly MIS, quarterly P&Ls and things like that are very critical. In terms of how startups are managing, it is certainly very different on case to case. Some certainly do this very well. They put in place processes, sometimes with our help, sometimes the other set of investors also work with startups. So where we are able to get access to that, and so we have that comfort level. Sometimes we have seen it's very difficult to get this out of founders, to the extent that we literally have to play hardball, which is not what you want to do, to get those out. And we have seen that, also the understanding of numbers, is very important. Sometimes what you get to hear, they feel they're doing good, but the way they have projected the numbers or put the numbers may not be right. So you have to probably do a deep dive and get that corrected, right?
Yeah, it would be great if you could share one example of a startup that's doing well in your experience and one bad example.
So, well, in terms of doing well in their
Managing finances and also reporting
Mm.
and communicating to you as an investor.
So yeah, I mean, there are a number of them, but let me. So there's this startup of ours which they have these financial metrics on the cloud. So which they including their customer data, or they are in a business which you onboard customers on a daily basis, right? So where they are a fintech, so where we know that who has been onboarded, what is the revenue, what is the margin they've made, and certainly their expenses are captured. They follow compliances also very well. They have the right professionals on board. So so there's that comfort level that what is being reported is correct. See, sometimes you may see a number, but whether it is correct also is important. Then there's an extreme case where they also defaulted on their filing, right? So when the numbers were not regular, we had, like I said, play hardball. But then beyond a point, it becomes difficult. So sometimes there are issues when founders have issues. These things take a backseat. So there are these extreme cases of somebody probably delaying the filing of statutory returns to a case where everything seems to be going smoothly. We know specifically, and sometimes if you ask them something, this is, sir, you have access to it, you so this is where the link is. So, you know, where you are not worried about those aspects.
Yeah. Has there been a case where you've not, because of financial compliance risk, you've not invested in a startup, or one of your startups have, gone bust?
There was a case in which we had kind of signed the term sheet, and when did we did diligence, we realized that these were, founders who came with good pedigree, good background, and not to freshers, not like early founders. These were founders with some experience, but their finances were in a mess when we did diligence, and their compliances were in a mess. Their GST reporting, GST payments were not made, their income tax return was not filed. So we took a call not to invest because, though we liked the business, but while we could have got that corrected, but what was important was to understand that, yes, like I said, when you're building a company, sometimes you feel that is more important. But then these are things which actually don't take that much time. If you have the right professionals helping you. So somewhere we felt that that commitment was missing to do it right. So we took a call not to invest. We've also seen it sometimes in, one of our companies where it was not, probably the intention was not to, cheat anybody or something like that, but that focus was not there. The commitment to do, to keep things or books in order was not there. But when you are inside the company, you can push and make it happen, right? But when you are not part of it, you can't do that. So there are these situations, where you take a call not to invest, you take a hard call.
Yeah. And what do you think are some unexpected sort of financial challenges that startup might face? And how do you think, startups can mitigate or navigate them?
So financial challenges are part of any
Any
startup
startup?
journey, right? At every step in a way. I think so. Today there are ways to, for example, if you're an early stage startup, you've raised some initial capital and you've gone on to build the product, but then your next round is becoming difficult. Now, in some kind of businesses, it is possible for you to cut down on the expenses, you know, probably raise some debt. There are institutions today available, like, government institutions who have started, like in one of the states we work with, the state financial corporation have supported startups in such situation as long as they have some revenue, right? So in those situations, you can get those support. You have to manage your money right, and you can sustain for a longer period. There has been examples, if you see, of startups who have come out of, their shell after 6, 7, 8 years and gone on to build large businesses. I mean, they were literally written off. People didn't even know. Some early investors put money, say in 2012, 13, and they went probably till 19, and suddenly they saw their traction building up and their business started growing, especially in pandemic it happened, and where then new investors came in. And so if so, I believe that if there is a good product, sometimes the time may not be right, and if you can sustain for a period, every business cannot be a rocket ship, right? We have seen these businesses which raise hundreds of millions of dollars and become a unicorn in 3 years, 5 years, and all of that. Those are rare examples, right? But business startup is a business, right? And sometimes there are products and services which take time to, for you to go to the market. But if you are aware, if you understand that, and if you are convinced, you can lie low, you can build slowly. Sometimes, you have to take debt, you may not get, or you have to find individual investors, keep your costs low, and you may have examples from the dot com bust era also, of startups with, Make My Trip is a famous example, which, raised a lot of capital, lied low, went back to the garage, and then became a very successful venture over the years. And there may be many such examples. So doing that is very important, as long as your product has some revenue, some sales, But then there are these deep tech startups today. See, if you are building a rocket, there is no way you can build it without sufficient capital support. Yes, there also you have to be careful. But in that, what becomes very important in those situations is that every step of your journey, you should look at a outcome, right? Say if you have raised $2 million, what are you achieving out of that 2 million? Are you building an engine or something which will achieve something? Which, for example, if you don't raise any capital after that, will that IP or that product have value? Maybe you can realize some value out of that. Today, there are situations where people, do acqui-hire, right? Where they hire you for what you have developed, and the product. And sometimes investors also get back their money, which is a good situation if you are able to do that. It should not be that you only when the final product is built, it should have value. You can create IP, you can create technologies which can have value in your journey, even in a deep tech startup.
Yeah. I mean, one final question. This is just to iterate how important managing finances. Have you seen any startup get away with not managing finances well for long?
I don't think so. I don't think that. I am not aware of such, but we don't know the inside stories. We have seen, many situations where it has come out in the open, and one of the factors was not managing finances well, whether it was done purposely or it was done unknowingly, whatever it is. But these things will managing finances, whether you are a startup, whether you are a large corporation, at some point you will get stuck, So you have to manage your money well, in the right way. You may get away with some splurging of money here and there, but not by, not doing it right, overall financial management. I think finance, compliance, regulatory compliance, these are very important, in your journey, along with your IP protection, legal, and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. This was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Manoj.
Thanks, Rahul. It was a pleasure. You know, I hope people who listen to this get to learn something and probably follow the right path.